I'd like to begin by sharing a story from our submission from a midwife that I personally know. She has granted us permission to share using the pseudonym Mary in the hope that no midwife ever has to go through what she did. Mary was an experienced midwife of 13 years. One day, she answered a call bell in the postnatal unit of her hospital in Australia. A pregnancy had been terminated, and Mary's colleague asked her to take the baby's body and photograph it, which is common practice. Mary says, and I quote, "When I began photographing the baby, the flash stimulated this little boy to breathe. I was horrified. We didn't know what to do. There was no policy for this situation. I picked up this perfectly formed baby, wrapped him in a blanket, and put him under a heater in the storeroom. It was so distressing. I felt under enormous pressure to keep working, so at every opportunity I would check in on him until he died some hours later. Adding to the trauma of this experience, being asked by the doctor to lie. By recording his birth as only 20 weeks gestation, when we knew he was born at 22 weeks. The significance of this is that at 20 weeks gestation, his birth would have been classified as a miscarriage, not a live birth, further diminishing the value of his little life. I made a mistake. I regret that day, leaving him to die alone. I wish I'd had handed this little boy to his mother to be held for the last few hours of his life, but his mum did not want to see him. I wish I had carried him inside my uniform so he felt warmth, love, and my heartbeat as he died. I cannot undo the past, and I live with that decision every day. I left midwifery for a few years after this experience. Since being asked to recount my experience, I have found it incredibly emotional and draining. This incident happened almost 19 years ago, but the trauma and grief of what has happened has not left me. It feels like yesterday. My story is not the only one. Babies continue to be born alive today following termination. Please remember, the pain of a baby born alive as a result of termination does not only affect the woman and her family, but also those who care for her. It is a pain we will carry for the rest of our lives. I was trained as a midwife to care for women during childbirth and to bring life into the world, not to take it out. Please do not ask us to be part of the unthinkable."
Thank you, Mrs. Pickard.
Just by way of clarification on the introduction, I just think it might be helpful for the committee to know that I have 12 years work experience with severe and complex and invasive care with disabilities of the most extreme kind, and 23 years in pregnancy support work. Therefore, my heart is very much as to what's happening coalface, not so much sitting at tables and discussing, which of course is essential in this case, but what's actually happening in real life on the ground. So I too have a story from a midwife whose pseudonym will be Jane. It needs to be borne in mind too, I think, that these women are a little fearful of their identity being known, the implications on their profession. Relaying the story each time is traumatic for them as well too. So Jane is a midwife of 25 years registration and tells of a significant and traumatic event that happened in a small country hospital in Australia in the late 1990s. As she recalled the details, she said, "This experience caused me much guilt and trauma, and even now, years later, brings a shadow and tears to my eyes. I was a senior midwife in charge of the ward one morning when a young teenager was admitted alone for a late-term abortion. I'll call her Emma, though that's not her real name. There was no one to take care of Emma, and so I offered to provide care for her, as long as I did not have to induce the termination. It was a social induction, and there was no medical reason for the termination. She was simply not able to look after the baby financially or emotionally and had no support. After the doctor had commenced the induction and labour was underway, Emma started crying, stating she had regrets. I said there was nothing we could do now as labour was underway. I tried comforting her and supporting her as best I could. After a time, she was delivered of a tiny baby. I can clearly remember two things. As I took the baby to the other room, I saw that the baby looked about 25 weeks and saw it was struggling to breathe. I quickly called for the doctor and said quietly, not wanting to alarm Emma, "Don't you think we should call for help and a retrieval team to provide care?" Doctor said simply and coldly, "No, wrap the fetus up and put it on the corner of the bench." From that moment on, everything was a blur, a cold metal table in the sluice room with a bluish pink fetus in a dish, a baby still breathing and still alive. I wrapped the baby up just as the doctor had requested, and through it all, had a sense of overwhelming guilt and helplessness. I wanted to run out and call for help, but I felt powerless and controlled. The baby was clearly viable. It was dying alone in the corner of the room. I did not even have the guts to go and hold the baby. I just detached from the situation and busied myself taking care of Emma, who was now sleeping. Finally, after some time, I entered the sluice room and the baby was still. I was unable to function or return to work for many days and went off on stress leave. It took time and some counselling, but it still bothers me to this day. The trauma that doctors and midwives go through after terminated babies are born alive is immense. And it seems to me that the dilemma that these health practitioners are experiencing on site is, where are the rights now? Who holds the rights about what goes on? So what is the procedure? What are we supposed to be doing? And that's why I see this bill as absolutely crucial for the sanity of these people, and also to perhaps weigh in the balance the bodily autonomy of that person now who has been born alive compared to the woman's reproductive rights now, where this individual, human, living, is no longer a part of her body. So we need to have clarification on a number of levels for this, and I think the bill addresses that. Thank you.